and no one's inherently bad with money. But if you do have some of these things that are preventing you from regulating your emotions or just understanding your behaviors and your patterns and cycles you're stuck in, then you're just going to be on a loop and you're never going to kind of get ahead of yourself.
Hi, I'm Tamara, and this is TELUS Talks with Tamara Taggart. What if your biggest money problems have nothing to do with money at all? In this episode, we're joined by financial educator, author Jessica Moorhouse to talk about the emotional side of personal finance. We discuss why financial freedom isn't just about budgeting, it's about healing. Jessica explains why your feelings matter more than your math and how your family history shapes your financial habits. I hope you enjoy the conversation. This podcast is brought to you by TELUS Smart Home Security. Secure, simplify, and easily monitor your home from anywhere using the Smart Home Security app. Visit telus.com/smarthome-security to learn more about Canada's most trusted security provider. Hi, Jessica. It's so good to see you.
Hi, Tamara. So excited to be back on your show.
So listen, money. You have a new book, Everything But Money. Money is so funny. It's hard to talk about, yet it's easy for me to have this conversation with you, but I don't want to talk about my own money. I just want to talk, you know what I mean? Like, money is so funny.
You'd rather talk about it in general, but maybe not go deep about your own money stuff. I mean, that's normal to feel like that. Most people are very uncomfortable being vulnerable with their money. But that's kind of the point of my book is in order for us to really move forward and find a path to reaching our financial goals, you have to kind of go deep and be vulnerable and be uncomfortable and talk about your feelings. And as someone who honestly did not set out to write the type of book that I initially did because I had my shield up. I don't like being vulnerable. I don't like talking about my feelings. I get it. But that really is the only way to kind of make some breakthroughs and to stop some cycles that might be hurting you.
And cycles is what's important because so many of us have been told how to feel about money from when we were little. And we don't even know that, right? Because it's things you might overhear, feelings, how your family was, how your friends are, these ideas that we need this much money to do this, or you're only successful if you have lots of money. You're only happy if you have lots of money. You say money is emotional, not just mathematical.
Yeah, I wish it was just numbers and mathematical. And lots of the personal finance books out there usually come from that lens of, well, just do A, B, and C, and then you should be fine. But what I was finding was, been doing what I've been doing as a financial educator for over 13 years. And a lot of the, one-on-one clients I work with or just, people that follow me and I, get DMs and emails from them, they would say, I know what to do, but I just don't know why I'm not doing it. Or why do I keep on self-sabotaging myself? Or it's not a financial literacy issue and it's not a motivation issue. So what is the issue? And so I really want to write a book all about what are the other issues that are in your way or preventing you from getting out of your own way when it comes to your money. And, they're largely emotional, behavioral, societal. Sometimes, there's a couple chapters that talk specifically about how any kind of experienced or witnessed or inherited trauma can have a huge impact on your money, which lots of people would never make that connection because they're like, what, if I got into a car accident and that was traumatic, how on earth would that, connect me to my spending problem? And I'm like, well, there's a lot of things that can actually make that connection. And so it's really important to kind of look at some other things in your life that may have an impact besides, oh, I'm just not good with money. I don't believe that. I think money is something that, just like anything, most things, it's not a talent. Some people can pick it up, maybe quicker than others, but it's a skill that anyone can learn. And no one's inherently bad with money. But if you do have some of these things that are preventing you from regulating your emotions or just understanding your behaviors and your patterns and cycles you're stuck in, then you're just going to be on a loop and you're never going to kind of get ahead of yourself.
That's so interesting that you said, how could a car accident affect your money? Okay, I need you to talk.
Do you want me to tell you how?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. So I was really fascinated when I was doing research for my book, and I, knew about these things before, but I really wanted to do a deep dive on how does trauma affect our money. And trauma can be so many different things. It could be big, it could be small. And I think a lot of people may not realize that they have trauma inside them, and trauma, it really stays within your body and it affects how you regulate your emotions. So if for example, I give a personal example in the book how I actually had a car accident when I was about 18. I was driving my way to university and I switched lanes, but there was a car there. And I don't know exactly what happened. I swear I checked my mirrors, but then I crashed into that car, moved to the side. No one was hurt. There's minimal damage, but it scared me to death. Like, I couldn't believe that just happened. It shook me to my core. And after that, I was very, wary of driving. I didn't, have any confidence in my driving skills. And eventually, when I finished university and actually my car broke down, I got rid of it. I never drove again. And that had a big impact on what kind of jobs I took. I didn't want to find a job that I couldn't transit to where I lived. I want to live in the city so I can I can transit to work or walk to work. And even to this day, I still have issues with driving. I don't drive. I had to get my full license actually a few years ago, and it was a really scary. And I was like 30, and had to get my full license because I hadn't had it, and it was terrifying for me. For most people, they drive every day. There's no big deal, but for me, it had a really big impact on how I kind of curated my life and what I could and couldn't do. And some of those, consequences or impacts was on, how I could earn money or what I could do. So, for example, even to this day, if I get a speaking engagement, but the only way I can get there is to drive, I'll usually say no unless my husband can accompany me and drive me. And so that's one example of like, oh yeah, that's shaped the whole of my life. And so if you have some sort of experience like that, it could be similar. Or another kind of example could be if you experience anything kind of traumatic, such as, childhood abuse or anything like that. If there are triggers around you, something that reminds you of that traumatic event, and your body will think that there's a real threat in front of you. And in order to cope, you'll go into a few different modes, such as fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And some of the coping mechanisms you have to get back into that kind of safe space of connection and peace, you may use money as a tool, such as spending to get that dopamine hit, or even the reverse. I see a lot of people have like hoarding tendencies or get into extreme frugality as a way for them to get some sense of control on something because they feel out of control. And so, when, as a financial counselor working with so many clients over the years, I saw lots of these coping mechanisms in their spending. And so, that's a really interesting thing for anyone to do. And I have lots of exercises in the book is to yeah, take a look at what are your behaviors when it comes to your money and what do those behaviors mean? It doesn't mean that I'm just bad with spending. It could mean something deeper like, "Oh yeah, I went shopping that day because I had a really bad day because someone said something to me that maybe triggered me in some way." And I also have an example of that too. I've been self-employed for about 8 years, but before that, I worked a corporate job. It was, very intense and not a very pleasant work environment, and near the end of I was there for about 3 years, I was spending a lot of money, and it's because I was unhappy, and once I left that job, my spending, kind of rebalanced itself. I didn't have this urge to go out and spend money on anything anymore because I kind of removed the thing that was causing me pain. And so a lot of us are in environments that maybe aren't healthy. And so we do something with our money to get our happy back.
Yeah, to make yourself feel better or to reward yourself for getting through something.
Exactly. Where really we should just find out, well, what's actually the problem and how can we either remove ourselves or fix the situation? Because, money is a band aid. Like you're going to have to keep on spending money to keep on getting that dopamine hit.
Yeah, that's so interesting. So it because it does soothe you, right? If you're feeling bad or if you are I mean not everybody. I mean just some people, but it's no different than anything else. Some people might I don't know, people do all kinds of things to make themselves feel better, but sometimes if you're feeling crappy and I don't know, or you're feeling good and you just want to reward yourself for it, and maybe you go buy that thing that you really wanted, but you don't need it. But you can make the excuse that, well, I deserve this.
Yeah, and sometimes that's not a problem. I mean, if you can afford it, if you planned for it, I think you should enjoy your money and treat yourself. But if it's happening over and over again because of something else, like there's an underlying issue, then that can become a really big problem. And then it can spiral into spending all of your savings, getting into debt, not making any progress with your finances, which we don't want to be in a space like that.
So what about shame? Does shame play a role in our money?
Oh, yeah. It's one of the I did a survey with my audience while I was writing the book to find out what were the prominent feelings that people had. Shame was number one. And that's something that I've dealt with. That's, yeah, is such a popular feeling or common feeling. And it's largely because of maybe how we experienced money or it was presented to us growing up. And we just kind of carried that shame with us. For example, I have a big chunk of the book talking about shame, such as if you grew up in poverty, you may feel ashamed and maybe you're in a better place now. You may be ashamed for your past. You don't want anyone to know because people can be judgmental. On the other side of it, if you grew up in wealth or you were very comfortable, but maybe now you're more middle class or lower income, you may be ashamed of your friends and coworkers to know that you grew up with money because again, there could be some judgment and you just don't want anyone to know. And so, because of that, you're probably going to hide a part of yourself and not be completely honest with who you are. And you may even prevent yourself from, asking for a raise or taking a risk with your career. Or, if you also came from maybe a family where, people weren't quote unquote good with money and there was lots of scarcity or debt was very common, you may feel ashamed for that, but then also feel like, well, maybe I'm also not very smart and can't learn how to manage money because no one in my family was very good. So I'm just not going to even put myself out there and learn these things. They're too complex. I just can't do it. And so shame really is this very powerful feeling that prevents a lot of us from doing more for ourselves, for taking care of ourselves, for learning the things we don't know, for taking those risks that could end up actually really helping us in the future. It really just it is kind of it imprisons you almost because it kind of just it keeps you in one place instead of showing you the possibilities and how you actually are, you do have potential and you are capable.
Yes. So do our problems with money or our beliefs, maybe our beliefs is probably a better, not problems. um, do our beliefs about money or our finances, does that all begin in when we're adults? Is that where that starts?
No, I mean, it starts really, really early in life, earlier than most people think. One of the exercises I have in the book is to help people really uncover their first money memory. So, what was the first interaction you had with money, or just money was present in that moment, and it probably, if you remember it, and you're an adult, that probably had a really big impact on you, and it imprinted something on you, and so for me, going back to the idea of shame that has always been in my relationship with money, I was able to reflect. And my first money memory was when I was 4 years old at the grocery store and stole something. I stole a gumball, nothing crazy, but still, I stole something that wasn't good. And when my mom noticed that I did that, I felt ashamed for stealing, which is bad, and ashamed for like putting shame on my family for looking, oh my gosh, our daughter is a stealer. She's a thief. And so there were so many kind of levels of money and shame and feeling bad that I clearly carried with me for decades after that. And it's just popped up in so many other instances. And so I have this exercise to help people really uncover what was your first money memory and then see if there is a connection between how you currently feel about money or what's the prominent feeling and what happened to you when you were really young. And it's so fascinating because I've been doing lots of interviews lately and a lot of people, I'm like, what was your first money memory? And they immediately know. Like it's not that, and I don't give them any prep time. They just immediately have that memory in the bank, in their memory bank that they can recall from 5, 6, 7, whatever age, and then their eyes kind of light up. They're like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. That I'm carrying some of these feelings and beliefs and values about money. And it started when I was a child. And I think, we sometimes forget that, yeah, children are sponges and they hold on to things until you're an adult and you can really, uncover what is going on and do the work to kind of move forward. Otherwise, you're going to hang on to that memory and that feeling for forever.
Yeah, it's interesting because if you have kids of your own too, I mean, I think that, I often wonder, like, am I, because I'll admit, I've always been told actually, oh, you're not very good with your money, Tamara. Like, but I always been told that, even when I was younger. And um, so I believe you end up believing it, right? And I'm like, okay, well, I guess, you know, and, and so you don't want your own kids to feel that. And so you try to be aware of how, but it can be so complicated when your feelings around money and then your feelings around what you think other people feel about you and your money, right?
Yeah.
And it's so, I mean, all these things that you're saying are so interesting because I feel like it's universal. Like, I don't feel like this is like, oh, you're talking to just a little niche group here, Jessica. You're not. You're talking, this is,
This is for everybody. Yeah, I mean, I personally have not met I'm sure there are people in this world that are completely financially secure, don't have any ill feelings about money, but those are unicorns, and I've never met someone like that, but I'm sure they exist. But most of us have some issue or some thing that we need to work through with our money because it's doesn't make us feel good. And that was the big surprise too for me writing this book and doing a lot of introspection and therapy was I thought I had a okay relationship with money and I found out I didn't. It's actually very unhealthy. I was very hard on myself. No matter what kind of financial milestone I hit, I was never good enough. Like I had a lot of issues that honestly stemmed from childhood and adolescence where I just never felt good enough. And that was part of what drove me to, be as ambitious as I am and wanting to reach certain heights and do these things. So part of me wanted to hold on to that because I thought it was what I needed to continue to motivate myself to move forward until I realized it's not fun feeling like no matter what you do, you're never good enough for yourself. Whereas lots of people are like, well, you're doing great. You're like, "Ugh, I just don't feel like that. And so I had to do a lot of self work on myself and my relationship with money so I could feel good about it. Because it doesn't matter how much you have in the bank or how much you earn. I know lots of people who have lots of money and they're miserable. I'd rather have enough and feel really good and happy with where I am and with my money and just with my life. And that's really what the point of the book is to make you feel good about your money.
yes, I love that. This is like, this is eye opening. This is majorly eye opening to me because I've never heard anyone talk like this about money. I've never heard anyone sort of, and what you're saying, Jessica, this is not like complicated stuff. It's
No.
just very real.
Yeah, I mean, I think that part of the reason I was interested in kind of writing about this topic is, yeah, I also didn't see any other books that talked about money and behavior and psychology and trauma together. And so a lot of the research I did was either finance books or finance research papers or papers on psychology. And so I really want to kind of make that connection for people because when you can make those kind of realizations about yourself, it becomes kinda like, "Oh, yeah, it was right in front of me the whole time," and sometimes it's obvious to other people, but it wasn't obvious to you, and so, of course, you're not making any forward movement with your money, you keep on doing the same thing because you're just kinda blind to it. We've got our blind spots, and so I'm hoping that, what I've got in the book can help you kinda see some of those blind spots for the first time.
Yes. Okay, so uh I have more questions for you, obviously. I actually have millions of questions for you, but we'd like to thank our guests for being here by asking them to choose a registered Canadian charity. You chose Pathways to Education, which I love Pathways to Education. And so we are going to make a donation in your name as a thank you for you being here. So thank you for supporting Pathways to Education and thank you for being here with us. So what about people who, who say, "Oh, well, you have so much privilege, right? Like, of course you have nothing to worry about. You have nothing to worry about because you are privileged." Or, you would have more money, Jessica, if you just had more discipline and you could just take care of, and just be more responsible. Like, right, there's this whole other side of it too, right? Privilege, discipline, just work harder, Jessica.
You're like, I am already working hard. As a woman, we work twice as hard and get half as much. And so, yeah, that was a big thing in the one of the chapters I talk about the theme of privilege and how, yeah, often that is excluded from a lot of personal finance books, which is ridiculous because a lot of the messaging is, yeah, you need to be more responsible. You need to take ownership of your financial situation and you need to just work harder and be more disciplined. And you're like, well, I'm doing all of that and I'm still earning 80 cents on the dollar. So what's going on? And so I really wanted to acknowledge that privilege plays a very important element in financial prosperity for people. If you're a person of color, if you're a woman, if you're a minority, if you have a disability, there's all these things that would prevent you from earning or having as much wealth as, say, a cis white man. And there's research, there's data points to prove this point. It's not just an idea or concept. This is the truth of what's going on. And if we don't acknowledge that, there are people that are working twice as hard and still earning half as much as someone else who has inherent privilege, then how are we supposed to make things more equitable? How can we lift those people up? How can we make sure that we are doing what we need to do to kind of break down some of these unjust systems that exist and are often invisible? And if you have privilege, sometimes it's really hard to see them because you are part of that system and you benefit from that system. So sometimes, that's also very uncomfortable to acknowledge that it's it's not that you're not working, just there's lots of people with privilege that are working hard, and I think for them it's difficult to admit that they have privilege because they think it will discount their hard work. Those are two different things. You can be a hard worker, but you can also be born into privilege if you, yeah, are white, grew up in a suburban family, you had connections to help you find work, whereas someone else didn't have those. Guess what? It's going to be easier for you to earn a higher income quicker, to get approved for a mortgage, all these different things. And so we need to acknowledge that so we can, take a step back and say, oh, I didn't realize that was happening. And now, with my position of privilege, how can I make things more equitable for people that don't have those inherent privileges?
Yes, for sure. And also, I I always get this feeling that people think there's not enough pie.
Yeah. That's really a scarcity mindset. If you don't feel like there's not enough money to go around, there's not enough anything to go around, you're going to get into this mentality that, well, I just need to protect myself, gather my money, da da da, da, which I think is really sad to see because we used to be a culture of community and the greater good and helping your neighbors and all this kind of stuff, and we've moved away from that over the past several hundreds of years where it's very siloed and it's like, get off my land, I've got a shotgun and all that kind of stuff, where it's like, that's not helpful. How can we, that's very limiting if you just think about yourself and your finances because you don't live in a vacuum, everything affects everybody. And so we really do need to think beyond ourselves and how we can be we're only on this earth for a short amount of time. So wouldn't we want to do better than the last generation? Wouldn't we want to help make things easier? And I know we've seen a lot of great change over the past couple decades. I mean, when I think about my grandma, she wasn't able to, get a mortgage by herself because of the laws that existed. And now, as a woman, I'm so proud to be like, wow, I have my own career, I have my own business, I have all these things my grandma could never have. And that's because there's a lot of great people that made that change happen. And so we need to really look at things through that lens and see what can we do for the next generation. And, again, think beyond just ourselves. Because I always find that when we focus on helping others, it does come back to us. And there's a part of the book that I really like. There's a really great book that I encourage everyone to read called The Soul of Money. And there's a part of it where she talks about this idea that money, and actually the term currency comes from the term career. I'm going to butcher that. It was like a Latin term that means current. Money is supposed to flow in and out. It's not just supposed to stay with you. And if it does, well, guess what happens when money is stagnant? It becomes toxic. And so we need to kind of, rethink again, how does money come in and out of our lives, and how can we make sure the flow continues to circulate by helping our communities, donating to charity, really being thoughtful and mindful of who we're giving our dollars to, what companies do we want to support. And we're seeing a lot of that now in Canada. And just, kind of thinking of money in a bit of a different way, because I always find when you do that, it does come back to you in that you feel more secure or more comfortable, or an opportunity presents itself that maybe wouldn't have otherwise.
So again, your book is called Everything But Money. It's available now. You're everywhere online. I mean, the best thing to do to find Jessica is to go to her website, which is jessicamoorhouse.com, and that's MOOR house.com. You're on Instagram, you're on Facebook, you're on YouTube, you're on LinkedIn, and you have a podcast where you talk about all things money, called the More Money Podcast. And again, your book, a fantastic book. Thank you for writing it. Thank you for making it accessible and understandable, that we all have money things.
We sure do.
And it's deeper than just math. So thank you. Really appreciate your time.
No, thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to another episode of TELUS Talks with Tamara Taggart. Be sure to subscribe so you can join us every Tuesday for another conversation. You can also check out our website, telus.com/podcast, and subscribe to our YouTube channel at TELUS Talks.